He went to bed in Darth Vader boxer shorts. He woke up bald, naked, face down in a hedge maze on another world, 2 moons in the sky. His name is Jason Asano, Australian, 23, a political science dropout from Melbourne who plays video games before bed. That's where He Who Fights with Monsters begins. Welcome back to Best Lit RPG. Today, we're diving into He Who Fights with Monsters, Book 1, by Shirtaloon. I've personally read this series more than 10 times. Grab it on Amazon. Listen on Audible. This is a fan work of love made to celebrate the book. Go and read it. Jason sits up on the grass and runs through the denials you'd run through. Brain tumor. Practical joke. Then, a touchscreen quest panel floats up in front of his face. Race Outworlder. 4 empty essence slots, 6 racial abilities, 1 item in inventory. Here's the thing about how Shirtaloon does this. He doesn't explain. Jason learns the rules by being in the world. The audience learns them with him. That 1 item is a medallion, transcendent rank, legendary, 2 effects masked behind question marks. The World Phoenix token. Notice how Shirtaloon introduces his single most important object with everything important about it redacted. Even the goddess of knowledge tells Jason later she doesn't know why he has it, so neither will I. And then something the size of his head latches onto his face. A potent hamster. Yes, that's a real monster type in this book. Jason beats it to death bare-handed. The system pops a loot prompt. Rainbow smoke rises off the corpse. His first spirit coin drops into the inventory grid, stamped with his own thumbs-up face. The coin reads, Product of Jason. I don't know why either. Here's the thing about how this book onboards you. No exposition. Pure pattern recognition. By chapter 2, Jason has killed 8 more lesser monsters with names so silly they have to be a deliberate choice. Flying eel, malicious hedgehog, tyrannical pheasant, carnivorous mandrake. He earns sandals. He earns pants. He's getting dressed by playing the side quests. The mandrake drops something different. A trowel, razor-edged. The item card flat out calls the edge wholly unnecessary for gardening purposes, tagged the trowel of the blood cult. So this isn't just a hedge maze. The gardener, as the line does not go, is not into roses. Jason reaches a stone well in the maze. 2 cultists walk out and have a conversation about the people they're planning to eat. None of it metaphorical. So Jason climbs down the well. Brick tunnel, magic lamp fired accidentally into his own face, rusted bulkhead door. The reward for getting through is an awakening stone of the stars, sitting in his inventory until he can use it. And he walks into a wrecked underground parlor, toppled bookshelves, a fallen chandelier. In the center of the floor, a huge brass pentagram with an unconscious robed man lying inside it. Stay with me here. Jason has spent maybe an hour in this world, and he's already standing in a cult ritual chamber. The wizard wakes up, a bronze-rank summoner named Landemir Vane, though Jason doesn't know that yet. He works out Jason is what went wrong with the summoning. He drinks a potion that fails. He pulls a dagger from his desk, and he tells Jason he's never tasted an outworlder before. They wrestle on the floor. The lamp goes out. Jason borrows a tactic from the small, aggressive monsters he's been fighting all morning. He bites. The dagger comes loose. He shoves it out blindly, and the wizard goes limp. Stay with me here. This is the first thinking being Jason has ever killed. The killing blow was an accident. The wrestle wasn't. He's rocking on the floor next to the body, hugging his knees, and Shirtaloon lets it land. No fist pump, no level-up fanfare, no music swell. Notice how this is the moment most lit RPG books would put a damage number on screen. Shirtaloon puts a silence. Then the wizard's familiar drops out of a vent, a snake the size of a fire hose, and chases Jason up the well. The mortar gives way. Everyone falls. Jason wakes broken-armed at the bottom of a collapsed well. The snake is dead. The loot drop is anomalous. No monster core, which is the first hint his racial gifts aren't normal. He gets Nightfang, a bone-fang dagger. He gets Dark Quintessence. He gets the Dark Essence as a quest reward. Above ground, he drains the wizard's last recovery potion, which is above his rank but works anyway. The line Jason lands on, he needs to learn the rules of this place. He loots the wizard. The keyring tooltip is how he learns the dead man's name was Landemir, so he apologizes to the body. 4 locked skill books. One of them, Ritual Magic 1, clears his rank gate. He absorbs the dark essence. The cube turns sizzling hot. Black smoke forces into his face, and he wakes with the power to see in the dark, plus a starlit cloak that lets him fall slowly and walk on water. Then he absorbs ritual magic 1. Then his stamina runs out, and he falls asleep. That's when 2 cultists kick the broken doors open, hammer and shovel. The shovel hits twice. Black. Jason wakes, vomiting in a dog cage in the manor cellar. Voices overhead. The mistress and Dougal the foreman are sorting Jason's disposition like an HR issue. The mistress is Cressida Vane, and she's annoyed. The corpse of her son was going to the kitchen, and the timing's off now. She sends Jason to the blood feast instead. She gifts Dougal an elf as a side reward. Then she lands the line that names the household. They're a nice, traditional, blood cult family. 5 other prisoners are in cages. 1 won't make it. Her name is never said, and Shirtaloon doesn't follow her. The other 4 are about to become Jason's team. A bronze-rank swordsman from Vitesse named Rufus. A bronze-rank Leonid weaponsmith named Gary. A bronze-rank volcano essence pyromancer named Farah. And a priestess of the god of purity named Anissa, who has not decided whether Jason is worth saving. Rufus walks Jason through how to use a spirit coin from inside his own cage. Jason eats it, forgets to actually open his cage door, and the cultists roll the cages into a chamber on a rail cart. The chamber is 25 meters across, black stone, a roiling blood pool at the bottom. The cultists call it the Pit of Evil, which is the kind of name a 13-year-old DM would come up with, and the book knows it. Jason eats a gold spirit coin. The cage door fires off its hinges like a cannon. 2 cultists drop. He summons the cloak, leaps over the blood pool, lands at the chamber doors, hides behind one as the rest of the cult comes pouring back down the tunnel and runs straight past him. Then he climbs back up, frees Gary first. Gary is the size of a professional wrestler, and his first move is dropping 2 cultists by the throat into the blood pool. Rufus duels Alicia Vane on the staircase, and the blood cult trowel, same one from the hedge maze, ends up in her throat via a Rufus to Gary toss and throw. Top platform. Cressida Vane is here. So is the High Priest Darrell, who Shirtaloon paints as looking like a chartered accountant at a costume party. Here's the thing about Cressida. She's been doing the actual cult work for decades, and the men of the Red Table refused her a seat because she's a woman. So Jason needles her about exactly that, and gets her arguing with Darrell about office politics in the middle of a human sacrifice. That's when he eats his second gold coin. He shoves with both arms. Both cult leaders fly horizontally into the chamber walls. Watch how Jason wins this. By making the priests of the Pit of Evil bicker about HR. He keys Farah out of the 4th cage. She reads the cult's ritual book and identifies the project, a Sanguine Horror, an alchemical apocalypse beast made of carrion leeches. Jason works out the rest. By killing the cult, the rescue party completed the sacrifice count. The 4 go down. Gary punches the leech mass. Rufus clubs it with the ritual book. The horror rises out of the pool in bandages and reaches for Farah. Jason, mana toxic from the failed potion, runs upstairs for altar salt. He comes back, scatters salt. The leeches recoil. Farah's collar comes off, and Farah burns the horror down with lava blasts and a geyser. Quest reward, the Sin Essence, which Farah misreads as the Holy variant, plus an awakening stone of the apocalypse Jason banks for later. The team climbs out of the chamber onto a mountain slope above a desert, 2 moons in the sky. Jason has spent 1 day in this world, so Rufus does the exposition Shirtaloon had been holding back. Outworlder, pulled from another world by a botched summoning. Ranks go iron, bronze, silver, gold, diamond, transcendent. Iron rankers live on raw magic. The Adventure Society runs the monster contracts. Confluence essences appear automatically once a user has 3. Jason can't find a 4th on his own. Locked in. The team sprints back to the manor. Gary carries Jason like a sweaty cloak. They get there in time to watch Anissa kill a fleeing cultist with 3 orbs of light from a 2nd-story window and drift down to the lawn, spotless. Her first line about Jason calls him a vagrant. The text never confirms how she got out of her cage. Anissa heals Jason, but then bans the team's summons indoors because her church is seizing the estate. Rufus's response is the dry one. He's not compromising the team to save her church from hiring a landscape gardener. The team clears the manor through the night. Gary's foundry golem and Farah's magma pile scorch a row of arches through the hedge maze on the way out. The lord of the manor, who is not Darrell, has fled with the vault. He's gone off page. Top floor balcony at night. 2 moons again. Rufus delivers the 10th day speech. The speech the rest of the book is built on. Adventurer work is the best thing 9 days out of 10, with the 10th day is the one that earns the other 9. Jason confesses on the same balcony that earlier he had to count to remember how many people he'd killed that day. Here's the thing. Shirtaloon isn't asking us to feel good about the kills. He's asking us to feel the weight of them. Morning Terrace. The team walks Jason through the magic system. 4 manifestations: monsters, quintessence, awakening stones, essences. Mana density drives the rank and frequency of all of them. Quintessence isn't interchangeable with essence. Awakening stone rarity controls pool size, not ceiling. Jason absorbs blood. He absorbs sin. The variant Farah misreads as holy. The Adventure Society's restricted essence list has death on it alone. Sin and doom aren't restricted. Dark plus blood plus sin combines into doom. Confluence essence. The build is affliction specialist. Weaker in short fights, unparalleled in drawn-out conflict. Jason raises the cube above his head and quotes something the cosmos doesn't recognize. Rufus tells him he might be strange in any world. And then Shirtaloon gets visceral. Iron rank hits. Jason's body purges every accumulated impurity at once. Light through his skin. Red-brown pus from his pores. Bloody tears. He passes out in a puddle of his own filth. Farah, fascinated, has never seen anyone purge that much. Notice how the book does this. Iron rank is not a level-up flash. It's a body remembering how much of Earth was made of preservatives. Now the Apocalypse Stone. Jason draws a chalk ritual diagram for an hour, cuts his palm, and chants the summoning. A leech emerges, then dozens. A waist-high pile sits where the chalk was. The pile crawls into his wounds. They heal him. He names the swarm Colin. Days later, on a wagon ride west, Farah introduces the next concept, an astral space. A pocket dimension connected to this desert. Magic-saturated water flows through and accumulates into water quintessence. The village around the lake exports it. Jason muses, you could make tourist money off this. That evening, night market. Jason cooks worm meat skewers at a stall. Anissa walks past, eating a spirit coin and staring. And the next morning at breakfast, she snipes about his manners. Jason responds with the line that names the chapter. He blasphemes frequently. It's kind of his thing. The next morning, up the mountain trail with the Aperture keeper, Hiram. The Aperture is a circle of shimmering water. Through it crawls a Shab, shark body, plated shell, 8 crab legs, 2 huge pincers. Hiram asks Jason if he's any good with that knife. Jason is not. So Jason fights his first solo Shab with the affliction kit. Leech bite, punish, inexorable doom. Then he backs off. The stack runs while the Shab keeps fighting, and 3 minutes later, the Shab dies on its own. That's the build's whole thesis. Inevitability over speed. Then he uses blood harvest to siphon the corpse and close his own wounds. Hiram asks if he's a farmer of death. Jason says it's just the incantation. Hiram tells him he sounds like an evil farmer. The first sign that other characters will read Jason's kit as villain-coded. The Aperture brightens. A wall of water blasts them off the mountain. Jason extends the cloak's weight reduction and they drift down. 17 Shabs rain out behind them like dropped luggage. Most die on impact. 4 survive. The system fires a Defend the Village quest. Jason hands 5 running children iron spirit coins to warn the village. He drinks a shellskin potion and spreads inexorable doom across the Shabs. Then he opens his palm and the leech swarm pours out like a shower. The stack rights itself. The third Shab actually refuses eye contact and shuffles sideways, having watched what the swarm did to the first one. Jason corrals it into the leeches. Quest reward. A water essence Jason loots from Hiram's Shab with permission and gifts to Hiram's granddaughter. Hiram looks at Jason and asks if that's what adventurers do. Jason says yes. Hiram repeats the line back. Notice how Shirtaloon hands that title to a villager, not to Jason. The book isn't letting Jason call himself an adventurer yet. Back at the inn courtyard, Jason names the swarm Colin, and Anissa walks in and lunges at it. Gary catches her wrist mid-strike. Rufus walks in and fires Anissa on the spot. Not over Jason, but because she's been deciding for herself when to listen, and trust is the rule. Her exit line calls humans filth. She slams the door so hard Gary jokes about the deposit. And here's the rule Rufus just set. Trust beats power. Shirtaloon builds the next 600 pages on it. Days on the road. On a walled town heading west, Rufus takes Jason up on the wall at sunset and gives him the 2 paths lecture. Buy monster cores. No risk. Slow. Permanently lowers the ceiling on the other path. Or train, fight monsters, meditate. Push to the limit. Let monsters break you, then meditate the gains into your new baseline. Jason starts his first meditation as the sky goes gold. They cross the desert. Jason heals every sick villager he can find for free. In a delta town, he cleanses a dying old man on the spot for a daughter who can't afford a city healer. The constable shows up, asks if Jason is from one of the churches, and Jason tells him he's the opposite, waving the flag for secular morality on a world where the gods are demonstrably real. The constable answers with the chapter title joke, "The gods are real everywhere."
Then a man named Jory Tillman finds Jason in a Delta village and offers a wagon ride to Greenstone. Iron rank, mid-20s, runs the Broad Street Clinic in Old City. Cheap and simple alchemy against the Church of the Healers racket. Days later, the wagon crosses a green marble bridge into Greenstone. Old City on one side, smelling of wood smoke and a Delta spice the locals call chittle. The island on the other, with magic-propelled carriages and a tracking stone permit gate. Jason's outworlder racial gift silently defeats the tracking stone. The officer doesn't know. Inside the island, a submarine subway pulls up beside an aquarium glass wall. Jason's reaction to this is exactly what mine was the first time I read this scene. Settled at Jory's clinic in Old City the first morning, 2 healer church acolytes are painting the word heretic on the door. Jason offers to graffiti them back. The acolytes beat Jason unconscious. He refuses to use his abilities. He wakes on Jory's table covered in unguent, and the healer church doesn't gain a foothold against him. Notice how Jason gets the win by taking the loss. Adventure Society waiting room. There's a teenage Geller heir on the bench with a shape-changing baby dragon on his lap. Humphrey Geller and Stash. They're going to be the best executed friendship in the book. Then Jason goes through intake. Gabrielle Pellin, acolyte of the Goddess of Knowledge. Russell, Magic Society. Guy, the official. The aura reader refuses to give a reading on Jason. His outworlder gift defeats it. So Gabrielle tilts her head, listens off stage, and reads his essences from her goddess directly. Dark, blood, sin, and doom. Affliction specialist. No restriction. Registered. Crosscut. Rufus rides to the Geller estate. Lady Danielle Geller, silver rank time confluence, the strongest adventurer Greenstone has produced in generations. She negotiates Rufus into assessing her son Humphrey personally. And here's the structural reveal Greenstone has been keeping. The local Adventure Society director isn't playing by the same rules as the rest of the society. Compromises must be made. The branch is compromised before Jason has registered for his first contract. Later that morning, Jason takes the loop to Divine Square. A tower in the shape of an arm thrusting into the sky, fist clenching a giant bearded head. That's the Temple of Dominion, the god of divine right and noble authority. Jason cracks a joke at the building, and a runic local named Arash asks him if it makes him feel better to disrespect things others find meaningful. Jason apologizes. Shirtaloon is teaching Jason that snark has a cost on this world. And then a god shows up. A light fills the square. Everyone drops to their knees. Jason sees a figure clad in armor with a sword at his side, twice as tall as Gary. The aura dwarfs every silver ranker Jason has stood next to, the difference between a candle and the sun. Jason gives the god a casual wave. He thinks he sees a smile. That's Hero, the only core deity in this pantheon without subordinate gods. A second voice from behind him, sea breeze scented. The goddess of knowledge has noticed him and is inviting him in. Inside the Temple of Knowledge, Jason meets the goddess herself and refuses to kneel. They have the kind of conversation an atheist has with a deity who finds him funny. She tells him what the World Phoenix token does. It'll fire on its own when circumstances require it. Then she admits she doesn't know why he has it. The book doesn't tell us either. Then Rufus takes Jason to the Geller Mirage chamber for Humphrey's training. Rufus loads a Desert Gorge scenario where Humphrey has to protect a small girl named Ellie from 6 tiger leopard monsters. Humphrey kills the monsters. He doesn't save Ellie. Rufus's read is that Humphrey has the gear of a dragon and the instincts of a librarian. The gap has to close, or the kid dies. Danielle nearly stops the simulation. She steps back. Rufus runs new children. Every time Ellie dies. That evening, a Greenstone Society night out. Symphony. Light streamers galloping over the audience from the instruments. Ballroom dancing. Gabrielle's at the function. Humphrey freezes. Jason walks Gabrielle through an earth dance and hands her to Humphrey. Outside the theatre, Lady Thalia Mercer, silver rank, married to the Duke's brother, intercepts Danielle. She's privately not on her husband's side about pushing their son Thadwick back through the Adventure Society assessment. Thalia is going to be the most rational silver rank noble in the book.
Crosscut to under the fortress. A Celestine woman wraps her knuckles in a cage prep chamber, Sophie Wexler. Her friend is Belinda Callahan. Sophie is fighting in the pits because the crime lord Clarissa Ventress is using her as bait against the new head of the Silver family, the man Sophie's been running from. Tonight's opponent is a man called Firefist, who has a reputation for what he does to women he beats. Sophie breaks both his arms through the cage mesh and walks out. Then she and Belinda show up bloody at Jory's clinic at closing. Jason, who is in the back room workshopping cake syrup ratios, tosses a tin of monster ointment across the room. Sophie catches it. They both leave. Shirtaloon has just put Jason and Sophie in the same room without either of them knowing who the other is. Back at the suite, Rufus opens a stone chest. He pulls out an iron rank legendary skill book embossed with two sides crossed over a skull. The Way of the Reaper, Form 1. The team has been holding it since before they met Jason. He won't say where it came from on the record, only that they recovered it from under a lake. Jason absorbs it, makes one fake martial arts confidence joke, and vomits onto his own knees. Gary tells the room that for Jason, this is actually a clean reaction. Same night under the fortress. Sophie fights the Queen of Thorns. Speed versus a thorny whip. Sophie wins by trapping the whip on her own forearm, yanking, looping the slack around the Queen's neck, and putting her face into the cage floor 3 times. 3 viewing boxes watch. Box 1, Cole Silver, who slaps a fruit platter across the room because Sophie is supposed to be his. Box 2, Ventress, smiling because that's exactly what Silver did. Box 3, Lucian Lamprey, silver rank director of the Magic Society. He stands so fast, he knocks his chair over, walks to the projection glass, strokes his fingers over Sophie's image. Stay with me here. The Greenstone net just closed. Outside the fortress, Jason is sleeping off the Reaper book. Inside the fortress, 3 of the most powerful men in this city are watching the same woman. None of them know Jason caught her once already, at a clinic, by tossing her a tin of ointment. Greenstone has the team it came here to fight. It doesn't know it yet. So Lamprey summons a bookmaker named Hubert and gets Sophie's whole biography in one monologue. She arrived in Greenstone in a dinghy at age 2 after her father's merchant group lost everything to pirates. The father became muscle for the previous head of the Silver family, who kept his son Cole off Sophie because he was that kind of man. Old Silver died. The inheritance passed to Cole, who is not that kind of man. Sophie ran to Ventress. The trap was set the moment that protection started. Then Ventress answers Lamprey's invitation to his box at the fortress. He doesn't rise to greet her, because to him, deference is for equals. He wants Sophie. Ventress proposes a mechanism. If Sophie gets caught for thieving, and she is technically a professional thief, Ventress's protection doesn't apply, and once Sophie is in the legal system, Lamprey can claim her via Magic Society influence. Shirtaloon gives us his smartest villain scene early. Days later, at the marshalling yard, Vincent Trenslow has been assigned as the candidate's assessor. Impractical hat, ostentatious moustache. Vincent is the cleanest official in the building. Half the candidate cohort has already passed before, records lost, and the new director has asked the assessors to test them with what Vincent calls punishing rigor. Thadwick Mercer steps forward, 16, spoiled, sneers at Humphrey, then turns on Jason with the "Do you know who my father is?" move. Jason responds with a deeply rude joke about Thadwick's mother. Vincent shuts down Thadwick's electrified hand retort on the spot. Ability use against a fellow candidate is a hard fail. Thadwick storms off to the corrupt second track Guy is running. Half the cohort follows him. Out on his first contract, Humphrey faces 13 rattlings eating a farmer's crops. He unloads the full dragon kit, wing sword, fire breath, teleport, the lot. Vincent notes he burned a chunk of the crop. Humphrey owns the choice, harvest now, over family later. Vincent quietly approves. Watch how Vincent is reading this. He's looking for a leader. Humphrey just became one. Second contract, a rune tortoise, affliction immune at start of fight. This is where Shirtaloon introduces Dread Salvation, the iron rank legendary growth sword Gary's been forging in secret for weeks back when nobody thought they were getting out of the chamber alive. The blade has the perfect mechanic for an affliction specialist hitting an immunity. Jason names his fighting philosophy out loud here, inevitability. Then a bark lurker in the swamp. Then a trap weaver contract Vincent floats as a leadership test.
Humphrey clocks it as a test and recommends the cohort refuses on principle. The cohort refuses unanimously. Vincent quietly tells Rufus that Humphrey passed. That night, terrace conversation between Jason and Vincent. Jason explains the Thadwick provocation as social advancement, picking the loudest noble in the field to spar with publicly. Vincent relays a line Rufus had used about Jason being a man of malevolent intellect. Jason takes that as a compliment. The final contract. A pack of Margols, dog-headed humanoids with sickle claws, wearing crude clothing fashioned from the flayed skin of their victims. Jason volunteers. He drops into a barn's shadow, emerges from a Margol's own shadow behind the pack, and tears the lead's throat out from behind. The kill dissolves into rainbow smoke. Margols have dog-strong noses. The smoke is tear gas on the rest. Jason cycles the full kit. One Margol pulls a leech out of its own eye, and the eye comes with it. Shirtaloon hands this sequence one of the most quoted lines in the recap fanbase. The narrator will not perform it. But here's the heart of it. Jason fights this fight like a conductor. He's stopped being an outworlder confused by his own kit. He's become its conductor. The cohort rides back to the marshalling yard in silence. Humphrey is shaken. Inside Jason, a quieter beat. For the first time since arriving in this world, he doesn't feel like a helpless pawn, and he can't ignore the part of himself that wanted more. Sunset at the marshalling yard. Jason walks straight to Thadwick, offers his hand, makes a public apology, and Thadwick refuses the handshake and storms off. Jason then turns toward Danielle Geller on a first-name basis in front of the crowd. Danielle delivers the chapter thesis line about backrooms versus ballrooms. Watch the choreography Jason just ran. The audience saw him as the reasonable one in front of a Mercer, then walking over to a Geller matriarch on first-name terms. The crowd updates accordingly. Thadwick doesn't follow. He doesn't need to. Later that night, concert hall intermission. Director Elspeth Arella approaches Jason. Elf, silver rank, full aura suppression, cream silk gown. She tells him to slow down on contracts. Then Thadwick's older sister, Cassandra Mercer, bronze rank, also aura suppressed, sits down with Jason in the art corridor in front of a desert painting. The flirtation is mutual reconnaissance. Cassandra reports back to her mother with the most load-bearing internal family diagnosis in Book 1. Jason isn't the threat. The threat is how Thalia's husband, Beaufort, will react to a public humiliation of his male heir. Back at the Adventure Society, in the Jobs Hall, a man has been waiting. Tall, narrow, robes too big. Clive Standish, adjunct assistant to the Deputy Director of the Magic Society, Greenstone branch. Jason's opening move is a deliberately confusing line that pretends Clive slept with his non-existent wife. The bit lands anyway. Then Danielle commandeers a Mirage Chamber rematch as a demonstration in front of her own family. Rick Geller's 5-person Iron Rank team versus Jason solo. This is the most disturbing on-page Jason scene in the first half of the book. He walks on water, provokes the trapweavers to lay a maze, fakes being chased, cuts the archer Hannah's throat from shadow, drapes her body off a web like a decoration. Then he appears behind the corpse, halfway made of shadows, and uses blood harvest. Her body dries as if years are passing in moments. He kicks the healer Claire underwater. He drowns Jonah in mud, face down. The viewing window goes dark. Shirtaloon gives the closing line of the scene to Jason, and it's one of the iconic Jason lines, paraphrased here as Jason telling Jonah what fighting Jason actually means.
Humphrey shows up at Jason's door later, uncharacteristically quiet, and asks Jason how he's all right with what he did to that team. Jason answers with a Desert Inn parable. A drunk tough harasses a young serving girl. You intervene, you move on. Next night, the tough's reputation is destroyed. Who does he take it out on? Is the intervention still moral if it puts more hurt in the world than it takes away? Humphrey doesn't have an answer. The friendship survives the disagreement. Notice how Shirtaloon doesn't let Humphrey come around. The rift stays open. A few days later, Jason invites himself along on Clive Standish's 4-village mangrove snatcher contract. Tree shade at a Delta village. Clive drops the cosmology lecture over a bowl of dumpling soup. The cosmos is dumpling soup. Each world is a dumpling. The astral is the soup. Some dumplings soak up a lot. This one, some almost none. Jason's. Physical substance can't exist in the deep astral, which means Jason's original body was annihilated when he crossed worlds. The body he has now was constructed by his soul on arrival, shaped to what Jason expected a body to be.
Clive notices halfway through that he just dropped a serious revelation on the Outworlder and apologizes for, mentioning the dying part. Then a mangrove snatcher charges. Clive places a room trap, snaps his fingers, and the monster bursts into ruptured gobbets. Jason asks why he doesn't hunt monsters. Clive tells him he's really more of a scholar. The character that just looked like comic relief has the highest single spell damage we have seen so far.
Back in Greenstone, Vincent clears Jason for tougher jobs.
Then Arella tells Jason she has a thief problem. The Duke's adventurers can't catch a single Iron Rank thief in dark camouflage. Arella restricts the bounty to Iron Rankers only. Genevieve, the deputy director, asks if Arella knows who the thief is. Arella says, of course not. That would be unprofessional. Notice how Arella talks when she's lying. Crosscut to Ventress's garden. Lamprey blows past her guards because the trap they set is failing. Sophie is too good at her job and keeps getting away. He demands to know where she'll hit next. Ventress tells him she doesn't know. The information is compartmentalized. Lamprey leaves. Ventress spits at a bush. The bush withers and blackens.
3 antagonist factions are now actively moving. Lamprey wants Sophie. Silver wants Sophie. Ventress is using Sophie. None of them know Jason has caught her once already at a clinic. He doesn't know it yet either. On the way to a Cavendish district contract at a public water pump, 5 Iron Rank thugs step out with clubs and recording crystals. They've been paid to film Jason taking a public beating. Jason flattens the lead with his own club. Thadwick's first paid hit on Jason. There will be more. Cavendish basement. Stone chewer rat infestation. Jason follows them down sewage tunnels and finds the boss the book calls the Rat Gorger. Rat-headed, shark-jawed, fur-covered muscle, long prehensile tail. He severs the tail with Nightfang, stacks the affliction kid, and Blood Harvest gets him an awakening stone of wrath. Days later, back at the marshalling yard, Vincent assigns a 10-person spirit coin escort to farm Geller 7. Thadwick demands leadership of the contract. Vincent assigns Phoebe Geller 2 stars instead. Thadwick takes it as a personal insult. Jason makes it worse by standing in the middle of the yard and explaining, to anyone listening, why Thadwick has never actually passed the assessment. Thadwick orders his 2 friends to refuse the contract on his behalf. The team loses its only healer. Humphrey dryly points out Jason isn't doing a lot for group cohesion. The morning after the marshalling yard scrap, Humphrey and Gabrielle show up at Jason's place with biscuits. Stash cycles through forms to eat them. Humphrey on the walk. His mother is helping him with the social side now because she doesn't want him drifting into what he calls Thadwick territory. A few days later, out on the desert expedition, convoying spirit coins back from the farm. Sand elementals rise out of the dunes around the wagons. Affliction immune. The elf Mose Cavendish unloads a fire and air vortex bomb on the main mass. Jason draws Dread Salvation and stacks the sword's affliction on immune buff until the blade is one-shotting elementals. Visit to the spirit coin farm itself. Mose learns mid-conversation that Jason is an outworlder. Humphrey, dryly, I think you broke Mose. Outside the farm, Jason starts a class systems rant at the workers' deference to the Geller heir, then stops himself. Humphrey walks him through the labour arrangement. Gellers pay better than Iron Rank adventuring. Workers gain part ownership over a few years. The Mercers don't run any of that. Jason lands the line that is the economic thesis of Book 1. The line between benevolence and oppression falls wherever the family says it does. Humphrey doesn't have a rebuttal. On the return trip, 3 sand skimmers slide off Tidal-drawn wagons. Jason calls them magic toboggans. An interceptor closes. Sand pirates. Uste tribe nomads. Jason boards through shadow and sprays leeches into a packed pirate group. Humphrey throws Stash, who transforms in mid-air into an enormous sand shab the size of a skimmer. 1 pirate skimmer goes flat. Humphrey's wingsword bisects a second skimmer lengthwise in a single overhead arc. Humphrey's bronze cousin Ernest, with the timing of a man who has been waiting all book to do this, calls him Hump on the spot. The nickname sticks for the rest of the series. Night camp. Jason confesses to Farah that he killed a dozen pirates today, and afterwards he felt good about it. He wants to know if that's a problem. Farah's honest answer, the reflex isn't good for the soul, but it'll keep him alive. Jason runs the cost out loud. The fathers and brothers and sons that get totaled in a single skirmish. Farah's mentorship lands the way it should. As long as he keeps asking that question, he's going to be all right. Back in Greenstone that night, Rufus and Vincent walk into the suite, slightly unsteady, sharing a wine bottle. Farah tells the others, with the lightest possible touch, that they've been like this for a while. The text never says the rest aloud. The recap channel will. Coming to this city has been good for Rufus. Days later, 2-star promotion hearing. Arella, Vincent, Genevieve on the panel. Jason opens with a self-critique that surprises them. Full responsibility for the cohort fallout. Then the goddess of knowledge intervenes from off-screen with a single deadpan word about Jason name-dropping a deity to a promotion panel. Arella asks Jason about her relationship with knowledge. He gives her the ant analogy. Boot or dropped building, the ant doesn't care which. 2-star badge. Then a 2-star body retrieval contract. Jason and Humphrey and Clive head to a dumpling soup briefing. A solo adventurer died on a marsh worm contract 2 days ago, mid-afternoon. Humphrey, grim. Unknown usually means it's killed an adventurer. Across town, Belinda half carries a bleeding Sophie through an old city alley. The Duke's household guard laid a trap. The Duke is now in the contract. They reach Jory's via a new construction breach in the wall. Jory takes Sophie in without asking questions and gives her a potion that blocks bronze rank blood trackers. On the body retrieval side, Jason, Humphrey and Clive descend through a well-digging ritual Clive sets up. The underground complex predates Greenstone, same construction as the Sky River Aqueduct that's been in the background since Act 2. Inside, they find 28 stone combat dummies arranged in 4 rows. They fight like Jason. The Reaper martial art Jason absorbed from the skill book originated at the culture that built this complex. The team has just walked into the ruins of the order that taught Jason how to fight. He doesn't know that yet. Then the Marsh Hydra emerges. Bronze rank, 5 necks, affliction immune at iron level. Jason cycles new spells, castigate, hemorrhage, and the stack builds. Humphrey holds the front line, says he doesn't think he can hold it. And then 3 racial gift evolutions land in one fight. Humphrey lights up iron rank blue, hero's drive. Clive burns his own life force into mana and casts a spell with the word annihilation in its name that severs a hydra head with a darkness vortex. The scholar in oversized robes is not just a scholar. And then Jason's interface evolves into party interface, contacts, voice chat, shared quests. The system rewards them because of each other. After the fight, Clive finds intact skillbook boxes, more Reaper forms. He'll keep digging on the down low. Lamprey would freeze him out if he found out. Humphrey awakens an ability called Spartoy, 3 Dragon Tooth Warriors. Jason's quest reward is an Awakening Stone of Absolution. He uses it on the spot. The system fires a Doom Essence ability, a conjured iron dagger of black obsidian and blood-red crystal the book names Ruin. Humphrey, dryly, Jason just used a stone with the word redemption in its name to conjure an unholy weapon. Shirtaloon is showing us what we already know about Jason. The inputs are made of redemption. The outputs are made of him. After the Marsh Hydra, the team rolls into the Uste Sandbarge Expedition. The Uste surrender opens the way, and the team finds slaves below decks. The Uste were running slaves themselves. The southern raid was desperation against a power further north. And at the sandstone wall after the fight, Jason hits Iron 1, 2 of 4 essences complete. Beth Cavendish, the city's top iron ranker, slaps his back. Welcome to the path to bronze rank. Back in Greenstone, Jason picks up an unusual contract. A Leonid mill owner named Kyle Lindover keeps reporting a Fergax that nobody finds. 8th straight adventurer. Lindover's about to get black marked out of business. Jason works it as paper trail fraud. The records hall identifies the beneficiary as a neighbor with Mercer family backing. He corners a low-rank Mercer thug named Dean Tuckle, who breaks and names Thadwick. Thadwick has been pulling in less successful adventurers, fixing their assessments, and running off-the-books operations under family cover. The alley attack on Jason at the water pump was Thadwick's. Jason's line on it, using Thadwick, was a mistake from the beginning. Then Thadwick sends a more dangerous man, Jerick, monster hunter, earned his essences in the Greenstone fighting pits. Jerick crashes Jason through the guest house door. Jason vanishes out of his cloak. The fight ends with Jason locking the iron suppression collar from his Vane Estate cage around Jerick's neck. Watch how Shirtaloon closes that loop. The instrument of Jason's nearly being sacrificed has become his arrest tool. Crosscut. Outside Jory's clinic, the chief priest of the Healer Church has shown up to demolish the building.
And then the healer himself appears, the god. He pulls every essence and awakening stone out of his corrupt clergy as floating cubes and spheres in front of the crowd. Then a second god arrives, dominion, scepter, crown, sneer. The disgraced clergy walk through Dominion's arched gate. Dominion looks around the courtyard and asks after Jason by name. Then he turns to Gary, calls him by his full birth name, and tells him he'll be keeping an eye on him. Days later, Old City Arcade. 12 Iron Rank thugs march down a covered market corridor. Jason recognizes 4 of them from the first alley attack. He gives the group a chance to leave, then he names the 4. They had their second chance. They don't get a third. Jason drops into shadow. 4 bodies in under a minute. The leader manifests a prehensile rat tail. Jason floats down from the high arcade ceiling onto the leader's head. Knife through the eye on contact. The remaining 7 freeze. Jason hands a healing potion to the nearest, tells him to heal his stomped friend, and leave. They bolt. 5 dead Adventure Society members behind him, all with badges. Jason walks into the Mercer Estates Park District unannounced. Talia teleports down. He plays her the Jerick recording. He has Dean's testimony. He has the civic records pulls. He could publish all of it and ruin the family. He doesn't. The settlement is quiet. Mercers compensate Lindover. Clementson takes public blame. Jerick is struck off the society roll. Dean walks. Talia presses her silver aura down to test him. Jason holds and lands the line that names Cressida Vane by way of warning. Talia accepts the deal. A few weeks later, Farah names the next plot for Jason. A big expedition. Investigation of the desert astral space whose water-producing aperture has been destabilized. The trio is on it. Danielle Geller leads. Multiple silver rankers, dozens of bronze, hundreds of iron. Gary lays out the unhappy part. Jason doesn't get to go. He was specifically excluded.
The morning the expedition departs, Vincent intercepts Jason. Arella has used the expedition to remove every politically inconvenient adventurer from the city. She's about to make sweeping changes. Then, in her office, she gives Jason an awakening stone of judgment and promotes him to 3-star iron. Jason asks if she's promoting him days after he killed 5 Old City adventurers. Arella tells him they weren't adventurers. They were filth she was cleaning out. So this is what Arella's anti-corruption crusade looks like up close. Notice how Shirtaloon is letting us into a worldview that started reasonable and is starting to break. Outside the office, Jason has his 3-star badge. The expedition is rolling east. Rufus, Farah, Gary, gone. The arcade dead are off the books. The only adult above Arella that Jason trusts to enter Greenstone in the next 48 hours is just arriving by ship. Outside the Adventure Society campus at dusk, Jason senses someone watching him from the dark. A man with midnight black skin and dark hair woven with beads walks out of darkness Jason can see through. The aura registers like a stillness, an absence of power, gold rank. The man's name is Emir Bahadir. Jason promptly hands him a Magic Society lead the channel will not detail, in the kind of small data trade that lands Jason on the gold ranker's radar. Out on a coastal contract days later, Jason takes his first solo bronze rank kill, a tidal troll terrorizing a coastal village. He uses Ruin to stack a new affliction called Vulnerable, collapses the troll's resistances, and finishes it with an execute spell he just unlocked called Verdict. Doom essence. Transcendent damage, the kind that ignores defense and resistance at any rank. Jason is now carrying an execute that doesn't care about rank. 2 days later, the Adventure Society's private dock. Both societies' leadership in attendance, plus the Duke and his brother. A mass of cloud appears on the horizon, 300 meters long, sunset blue and orange. Emir steps off the ship and teleports to Jason in a single step. He introduces his silver rank chief of staff, Constance, then pulls a chemistry flask out of a dimensional jacket. Cloud models drift out. Emir pushes his hand into the palace model. Over 10 minutes, the ship transforms into a floating cloud palace off the north shore. The shipment trap. Belinda, in servant disguise, watches the wagon's aura through a sewn-in crystal plate. Sophie drops from a tree behind the wagon. Jason and Clive are the drivers. Sophie's attacks bounce off the trap weaver robe. Jason marks her with Mark of Sin, an affliction that forcibly projects her aura. She vaults the wall and runs. She can't hide. Belinda diagnoses the affliction in a brick landscaping shed, and they split. Clive runs a flaring ritual in the shed, extracts the aura trace, and locks a tracking stone onto it.
Jason climbs an island yacht club, uses a commissioned non-magical telescope to pick out a shadow on the far old city shore, and shadow jumps across the strait. The mark of sin tells him where she went. Old city dock. Sophie runs up the boards and finds Jason already waiting, shrouded in starlit cloak. Dock workers crowd up and take bets. The knife fight is over fast. Jason grabs her mask and her silver hair spills out. He freezes. He recognizes her. Jory's Celestine friend. Then a half-dozen masked attackers pile onto Jason and Sophie runs. Jason chants inexorable doom behind her, so he knows where to find her. He hits the attackers with the leech swarm, keeps them alive with Feast of Absolution, questions one of them, a man the dock workers call out by name as one of crime lord Adris Dorgan's men. The interrogation gets him one fact.
The silver rank tracker running this operation is a man.
Sophie collapses through Jory's back door. The new healer church priest, Donal Lang, is on shift. Sophie's wounds have a stacked, self-replicating necrotic curse. Donal can't cleanse it cleanly. Jory mutters that if Jason were here, he'd have eaten this kit for breakfast. Jason walks in the doorway and tells the room exactly what he is. He is what did this. Sophie surrenders. The contract is singular. Jason can claim a thief. Belinda walks. Then Jason penetrates Adris Dorgan's home undetected. Dorgan finds him standing in the library in front of the paintings. And here's where Shurtaloon drops the secret that drives the entire back half of the act. The director of the Adventure Society is Dorgan's daughter. Dorgan walks Jason through the mechanics. Arella's been provoking Lamprey. Ventress has been leveraging Sophie into Lamprey's hands. Lamprey is the loser of the play. Dorgan ends with a death threat if Jason derails his daughter's ambitions. Jason agrees to keep the secret because sharing it is worthless to him.
Sophie wakes manacled in a basement treatment room with a power suppression collar. Jason is across the room with a book. He warns her she's not in control of what happens next. His cloak rises off him in starlight. He explains the Lamprey, Ventress, Arella triangle. He explains a service agreement clause buried in the city's contract with the Adventure Society. The closing adventurer on a contract gets right of refusal on anyone sentenced to indenture as a result. Sophie asks how she knows any of this is better. Jason tells her honestly that she doesn't. He could be making it up. Then Sophie, manacled, picks a 5-element internal door lock with her hands tied, just to demonstrate. Belinda joins her in the cell and argues for trusting Jason. Sophie's read is more cynical. They've been running further into the fire to escape being cooked. At this point, all they get to choose is who bakes them. The next morning, Jason meets Arella and Genevieve in her office. Arella tells Jason on the record that he can have his thief. The city's agreement is clear. She walks him out, reading himself as a political genius. She has already privately told her own legal advocate to roll over. The magistrate is bought. Vincent tips Jason off. The hearing is rigged. Jason has to act before it starts. He says the line out loud. He forgot that corruption works around the rules, not within them. So Vincent walks Sophie's release paperwork through a clerk who isn't in on the fix, gets every form stamped before Arella's people can intervene, and Sophie walks out in a tracking bracelet. Jason hands the clerk a bottle of the city's best whiskey by way of pre-apology for what's about to happen later. Across the building, Arella sacks Vincent. Vincent tells her on the way out that she's become exactly what she claimed to be fighting. She's selling a woman to Lamprey. He doesn't care who her father is. She's worth hating all on her own. Then the death stones start firing. The expedition is collapsing. Genevieve presses Vincent's pin back into his hand. They need everyone they have. That evening, on the Cloud Palace balcony with Emir says, in the half-joke gold rankers do, that owing Jason a favour in 10 years will be valuable. Jason tells him favours aren't the currency between friends. He explains why he's spending all his social capital on Sophie. A responsibility isn't only a responsibility when it's convenient. He can live with burning rotten bridges.
Constance interrupts. Arella is at the Cloud Palace gate. The expedition is dying. Iron, bronze, a silver. Emir's casual amusement drops out of his voice. Jason offers a recovery station on the desert side. Emir accepts. Arella gives him Vincent back for the day. Hester opens a portal to Boko. The first crossing carries Emir alone. The strike team has to wait for cooldown. When they reach the astral camp, they're too late to fight. At the camp, the construct army falls. Wooden combat dummies, stone golems 2 and 3 times human height. a 10-meter steel spider held in reserve,
robed bronze and silver rank figures on animal-shaped mounts.
Thalia Mercer plows through golems like a bowling ball. Farah's obsidian armor and lava-cord sword whip carve through the main mass. Gary and Hudson raise walls. Rufus flickers through the lesser constructs and drops a bronze-rank clockwork tiger in 4 cuts inside a moment of frozen time. Shirtaloon is showing us Rufus at his best at the moment that won't matter. A silver-rank robed figure moves on Farah. Rufus and Gary intercept. Its arms hang limp. It fights with kicks alone, speed bordering on gold rank. A decisive kick crushes Gary's ribs through his armor. Then the robes shred. Not external armor, steel grafted into flesh. 4 artificial arms emerging from its back, tapered like spearheads. Shirtaloon never confirms it on the page, but this is what the builder is willing to spend. Rufus alone against the silver ranker. Speed of light lands no damage. A metal arm transforms into a blade and severs Rufus's sword arm. He's tumbling through the mud, crippled and near dead. The book lands its hardest single argument in 3 words here: the tyranny of rank. Every advantage of skill and effort and family training can lose to a body bolted with foreign metal 1 rank higher.
Without Gary and Rufus, Farah is alone, low on mana, holding the line. Danielle teleports in from above to intercept the abomination. Even after years of using her ability, there's still a moment of disorientation on arrival. That moment is everything. 4 metal arms pierce Farah's body, 1 into her head. Farah's corpse is still falling as Danielle recovers and attacks. The book delivers the death in 1 sentence, so we let it land in one. Notice how Shirtaloon refuses to soften this. No last words, no parting gift, no apology to Rufus. We were trained for 100 chapters to believe this was a fantasy where banter wins. This is the chapter where that promise gets pulled back. Danielle hands Gary Rufus's severed arm and tells him Rufus needs him now. Farah is past help. Gary's face crumbles. He nods. He picks Rufus up and croaks for a healer. Emir's strike team arrives too late to fight, but the camp stabilizes around the news a gold ranker is on site. Emir sits with Rufus in the sand. Rufus whispers that he failed her. Emir, softly, gives him the soldier's blessing. Friends at her side, comrades around her, the enemy in front. That's the framing for when a friend dies the way you'd most want to go. In the days after, the expedition pairs down, 19 alive, 5 untrackable. 2 of them are Jonah Geller and Thadwick Mercer. Danielle's read, 5 simultaneous evolutions granting the same effect aren't coincidence. Emir agrees. He hunts a leadership cultist himself, gets a suppression collar on him, and then a silver rank power that isn't the cultist's rises up from inside the man, and crystalline spikes erupt from him in every direction. The body ends up draped over what the book describes as a strange star of jagged crystal. The apparatus never gets a name on the page. We won't give it one either. Danielle wants the Magic Society to examine the 5 untracked survivors. The Greenstone Magic Society director will side with the families. Lamprey will side with the families. The implants stay in. Danielle has the chilling line for an institutional choice. We love choosing ignorance. The builder has shipped its compromised assets home through the institutional door it knew would open. 2 days later, Jason and Gary haul Farah's casket into the desert past the camp. The team's gear is locked in her storage space. Jason has to lay a salt ritual to open it. He gets it wrong 3 times. He keeps remembering Farah teaching him his first circle. The 4th attempt holds. Out spills the accumulation of a life. Gary tells Jason to take Farah's magical theory books. She'd seen more potential in Jason than Jason has yet. The closest book one comes to a directive, Jason carries into book 2. Back at the tent, a grieving father grabs Rufus's shirt and insults Farah on the way out. A golden sword appears in Rufus's hand at his side, without his face changing. Gary clamps Rufus's sword arm down without looking, breaks the father's face with his free fist, and tells the man to leave. Shirtaloon is showing us the body has not learned the new rule yet. Then the trio walks for Boko. Days of quiet. Rufus follows passively. After hours, Rufus finally says the line he is not allowed to say, that Farah followed him to her death. Gary's voice gets louder than it has been all book. He shoves Rufus down, plants a foot on his chest, and tells Rufus to stop taking Farah's choice away. Watch how Gary picks the role of moral backstop here. Rufus is leading. Gary refuses to let Farah be reduced to a footnote in Rufus's guilt. The trio reach Boko at sunset, an open-air bar. They sit. Rufus raises his glass.
The toast is 2 words. They drink in silence. Then, the Farah stories. The Farah arc closes on the toast. Jason briefs Rufus on Sophie's protection plan. Rufus, sharp again, lays out the political mechanics. The Continental Council will hold the Greenstone Adventure Society upside down and shake until the goodies fall out. Arella is the lever. Danielle Geller lodged a formal protest over Arella's head before the expedition even left. Gary, watching, says it has to fall on Arella. The glass in Rufus's hand shatters. He tells the table he's done with Greenstone's worthless adventurers, and he'd like to pay Elspeth Arella a visit himself. Jason tells him not to muddy waters that aren't useful muddy. Shirtaloon leaves the threat unresolved on the last page. We will too. Ymir portals the trio back to Greenstone. Dinner in the Cloud Palace. Then drinks on a terrace at sunset over the ocean. Constance joins. The guest suite, Sophie and Belinda inside it, is a holding pattern with better drinks. Sophie hasn't bought Jason's protection. She's tactical wary, not relieved. Back on the terrace. Ymir's read on Arella. Losing all those adventurers will be more than the society tolerates. Danielle's protest is Jason's leverage. He'll be astounded if Arella keeps the directorship. And then the closing line of Book 1. Rufus drops a dry remark about Jason now having enemies a tier above his rank, directors of both the Adventure Society and the Magic Society, and Jason answers with a grin instead of fear. Here's the thing. The book's last verb is win, not survive. Iron rank with silver and gold enemies, a team intact through the worst loss of their lives, a Celestine pitfighter sheltered in a gold ranker's cloud palace. That's the wage of doing the right thing. Shirtaloon argues, on this last page, that it's still worth paying. He Who Fights with Monsters, Book 1, by Shirtaloon. Grab it on Amazon, listen on Audible. This book is one of the modern classics of the genre. Go and read it. See you next time.